Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, I'm Dan Marty.
I'm Kevin Sullivan.
It is Thanksgiving week, baby. The world of professional wrestling is rocking. The Paul Bearer Holiday Headlocks Toy Drive. If you missed us live in Melrose on November the 13th, have no fear. Have no fear. We're going to be able to do everything online, around the corner, around the globe, through the big day itself. But right now, a brand new Wrestling Insiders Extreme is now. Wrestling fans, it's that time of year again. Boston Wrestling MWF is headed back to Tampa, Florida after a WrestleMania week of fun. This time to bring you live Wrestling Insider episodes and cyber autograph signings for our 10th Paul Bearer Holiday Headlocks Toy Drive mission. If you weren't with us at Memorial Hall in Melrose back on November the 13th, don't worry. We're going to have VIP packages galore along with the live online experiences. First up on deck, Wednesday afternoon, December the 1st, it's WWE Hall of Famer Jerry Briscoe. He's been with us at live events and was with us WrestleMania week for some highly regarded Wrestling Insider episodes. Briscoe is back and he's going to be the captain of this year's toy drive. Get ready to join Jerry live on December the 1st. For complete information and VIP packages, visit BostonWrestling.com. More announcements to come.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
Wrestling fans, Dan Marty, along with Mr. Kevin Sullivan, a man I'm so happy to have with us here, a vault of knowledge. We have got to try and pick every ounce of information you have from his head. I mean, I don't know why you haven't done a book yet, Kevin. I know you've been involved.
Yeah.
Well, with old school
Yeah,
that we've been catching. I've only had a chance to read a couple of chapters, but I love it so far. It is available on Amazon, and along with our holiday Headlocks Toy Drive, I think old school would make a great holiday gift.
I do too. Good idea.
All right, we're taking a little bit of a turn. We've talked with Kevin about some passings. We've talked with Kevin about Boston and him breaking into the business, some early WWF days. But here on Tuesday nights, it's more of a look at the world of ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, the people, the places, the ambiances and such that made it such a cult phenomenon even to this day. And, you know, while Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Shane Douglas, Rob Van Dam and such are recognized as ECW icons, in the early days of ECW, Kevin, you were kind of a mainstay with ECW.
Yeah, I was with Taz, the tag team champions. A lot of people don't know this. I broke Paulie in the business.
You broke Paulie in? And how was that?
He came down with a wrestler from Baltimore. I called him Tombstone. Scott Hall was working for me.
Came down where?
He came down to Florida.
Florida,
Sorry.
okay.
And Scott Hall was working for me, and this guy was a jacked up guy. I thought he'd be a perfect opponent. We named him Tombstone. We put Scott's date of birth and death with a question mark on his back. And Paulie was working the program with this guy against Scott, and I'd tell Scott, drill him every night, and he'd knock him off the apron. And I said, I can't run this guy off the business. He's great. So he came, and if you really want to know what Paul did that was so smart, with not the talent they had in Florida, he took Florida and brought it to ECW. You know why? With all the blood and violence they had, wrestling was the main event. Shane Douglas, right? Terry Funk. That's what we did in Florida. People always said Florida was a wrestling territory. Yeah, underneath. But what drew was either the world champion or a bull rope match or a four corner match. It was blood and guts. You know, the Mulligan, Rhodes, Wyndham. And Paul did a hell of a job.
And what did you think of a young Paul Heyman? I know he was a photographer for a lot of the magazines.
Right.
He was kind of well connected with the Vince McMahon senior crew and so on and so forth. What did you think of him as a younger guy?
Well, I knew he needed a gimmick. I gave him the phone, and He was off and running, and I knew he would make it, but I didn't know he was going to be this big. I don't think anybody could predict that. And he's got a great mind for the business. He's a great character in the business. When he plays an advocate, he's just, I don't think anybody could have done what Paul did and competing against two giants in Cavendish. Because those fans, the thing that reminds me right now is how loyal the AEW fans are.
Yeah.
Paul had that before. There was an AEW way before.
And imagine if he ever had that kind of corporate backing.
Yeah.
Imagine if he ever had, they did have a video game deal, but it came very late.
Yeah.
They got a national television deal, but it came very late after WWF and WCW cherry-picked almost all of his top guys, and he couldn't afford to compete with it.
Yeah.
But he did everything he could to keep the brand alive, and we're going to talk more about that as the episode goes on. But how was ECW first pitched to you when he called you for the first booking?
I was working in Japan, and he called me and said, "What are you doing in between Japan?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Could you come up?" I said, "Yeah." And I had worked for the original ECW, Eastern Championship Wrestling, Joel Goodhart.
Yeah, he was producing, I should say, some pretty violent events himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I worked for him 3 times, and I worked twice with Abby, and then once with Bam Bigelow. So he was, and then Paul came in, and I guess Joel sold it to Paul, right?
Who was it, Todd Good?
To Todd Gordon and Paul,
Yeah.
right? And then they were off to the races. And they created that niche place to go. I mean, that neighborhood was very dangerous.
Yes.
But those people would stand in line, you know what I mean?
It wasn't too far from those 2 steak and cheese sandwich places
Yeah.
in Philly.
Yeah, Geno's and I forget.
Pat's,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
yeah,
Pat's Steakhouse. Yeah. But, you know, and then if he had the backing, he would have cut into both companies significantly. And if he had the backing and he had guys jumping, it would have changed the wrestling business completely.
Again, the following that they still have to this day is amazing.
Yeah.
That's why we started to produce this show after you're familiar with some of the nonsense that went on with Tony Atlas and his ridiculous, I was paid $55 every time I came down for 6 years from Maine, please. But so we decided to try and take a negative, turn it into a positive, where there are so many fans that loved ECW in that time period of wrestling. Why not try and test the waters for at least a few months and produce these ECW themed shows? It was unfortunate. I don't know if you knew this, but we had New Jack with us to tape what were going to be the original episodes that started to run back in early September, and he passed away 6 days later.
Wow.
And I mean, this is a guy with a reputation, obviously.
Right.
But the fun that him and I had that day, I mean, I think for the people that never got to know the human being behind the ultra-violent, out-of-control persona that they saw in the ring,
Right.
they missed out on a real treat. I don't know if you ever got to know him.
Oh, he was a very good friend of mine.
Oh, was he really?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, how about this? But before we go too deep into it, just some memories of New Jack.
Well, we had a unique relationship because I managed Ray Candy one time, and Ray Candy
Makes
broke him
perfect sense.
in, and me and New Jack were friends, and I always could see through that facade. He came on as a tough guy. He was a great human being. I mean, there was definitely 2 sides to Jack, you know what I mean? And he could be as gentle as a lamb or as violent as a tiger.
We had so much fun on those tapings. We booked him to come back the next month for not 1 but 2 days to really stockpile the interviews and the footage. And just 6 days later, I was at Fenway when it was still limited capacity.
Right.
It was by 5,000 people. And I thought my phone broke because just it wouldn't stop buzzing and vibrate. So I said, what the is wrong with this? And then every message was, New Jack died,
Yeah.
New Jack died, New Jack died. I couldn't believe it.
I couldn't either.
There was nothing about him that day that made me say, geez, this isn't going to be a human being that's going to be here 7 days from now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And his new wife was a lovely lady. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet her, but, you know, he was stuck in Atlantic City. None of his East Coast friends would come and see him. And this woman befriended him on social media. And then after a couple of weeks of talking, drove up from North Carolina and a romance developed. And he wound up marrying her. And she had 3 kids. And I remember we went to Kowloon, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
My good friend Andy Wong, shout out. I said, geez, what did her kids, with everything on you online, think of you? And he went, they look at me like I'm a big toy. And that's the side that the fans that only know him as the Eric Coolest mass transit incident and some of the other crazy things he's done, they never get to know that side of him.
Yeah.
And I wish we were able to showcase more of it. Because like I said, we had a heck of a lot of fun when we did those interviews. But you know what? There were so many great stars in ECW. I don't think we're ever going to lack for guests to be able to have on. But he was a lot of fun, and he's missed. But back to the world of Kevin Sullivan. Take us back to September the 18th, 1993, and what would become the ECW arena. You talk about a wild tag team match with 4 great icons of the industry. Kevin Sullivan and Abdullah the Butcher against Terry Funk and Stan Hansen in a melee, a double disqualification.
Yeah.
Something I actually went out and bought on VHS tape so I could see it.
The funny story of that, the backstory is 4 of us were dressing together, and we all 4 were working in Japan for different companies. And
All 4 of you were in different places in Japan?
yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
And the Japanese press was there, which is a big thing. And Paul stuck his head in and said, I don't care who gets beat, but we need a clean finish. We all looked at him and smiled. We left the room. In Henson's book, he says, I looked around the room and knew Terry wasn't going to do the job, Abdullah wasn't going to do the job, Kevin wasn't going to do the job, and I wasn't certainly going to do the job. And it was a funny situation because probably one of us would have done the job if the Japanese press wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know, but it was, our mainstay was Japan at the time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That was your bread and butter.
Yeah, yeah.
ECW, I don't even know if I'd call it a full-time territory. at that
No, it
point.
wasn't.
They had a TV show, but they weren't running regular live events
No.
outside of Philly.
Right.
And it went to, like you said, double disqualification,
Yeah.
the match itself. But memories of the match, I mean, do you have any of them? You
Oh.
talk about a unique match. I mean, probably, I don't know if you 4 ever get into a grouping of a tag team match again, or before or after.
One time in Florida, there was a 4-way, me, Dusty, Abdullah, and Sabu. But that's,
You get close.
yeah, we were close. But that's the only time that I was ever in a 4-way with those guys.
Well, it's worth going out of your way to see fans. I imagine it's got to be on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah,
or on
yeah.
WWE Network, one of those places. Did you see promise in ECW that first night you were there?
Yeah.
Did you?
Because the fans were so rabid,
Mm.
you know what I mean? And to me, the first thing I thought was, this is the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's fan participation.
Yeah.
I said, this is something you don't see, you know? And until the NWO came along, you didn't see it like that, you know what I mean? So he was, again, he was ahead of the curve.
And look at 93 WCW, that was kind of flat. 93 WWF, that was kind of flat. They were just starting to get into the mix with the whole steroid indictment and so on and so forth. So that was a tough, even beyond that, creatively, it wasn't all that great. So ECW, even though it was kind of a niche product that wasn't seen by the masses, for those that were able to experience it, like you said, it was fan participation at its finest.
Yeah.
You know, those fans felt like they were part of the show.
Yeah.
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 And again, look at what it would go on to become as it would evolve evolve over the next few years as we catch fire. I froze. Can you believe that? I don't remember all these questions off the top of my head. The same night you were there, you saw the debut of a team you'd wind up working with in WCW, the Flyboy Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge, Public Enemy.
Yeah. That was the first time I met Johnny, but I had known Teddy. And Paul, and if you thought, what shocked me was that was 180 degrees from Teddy's original gimmick, in Japan. I think
He was a cartoon type character.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, this is something. And Paul was, like I said, that was the height of, or maybe not the height, but it was the beginning of huge popularity for that kind of music, right? Rap music.
Yep.
And these guys were like rappers, and it was good. They were Vanilla Ice rappers, right? So again, he knew placement. He knew that at the end of the show, he wanted people to see a world title match, whether it be violent or not. I don't remember any three-way matches before, Paul. Do you?
I actually think the first one took place in Smoky Mountain.
Really?
With Cornette, yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
They took the concept and they just turned it in a more violent direction.
Yeah.
I guess maybe is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I think it's much more famous from ECW doing it in the early days. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't see him in WWF or WCW, no.
Yeah.
No. ECW, I think, kind of took the Cornette idea and popularized it. But right now, fans, you want to talk about popularize, we're going to take a brief time out. We'll be back with more of Kevin Sullivan here on Wrestling Insiders Extreme. Stand by.
Boston Wrestling Sports and the MWF explodes into a new year of unknown with professional wrestling content galore, and we need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after we review the previous night's Monday Night Raw, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with the unpredictable WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights after WWE, NXT, and AEW at 10 p.m., you never know who's going to show up on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's No Holds Barred Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll journey through the 80s and 90s on Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty. Friday nights after the lights go down at the Thunderdome on SmackDown, it's John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view watch-alongs, and more. If you want early, ad-free access to all of our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and to help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times, for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, I'm Dan Marty.
And I'm Mr. USA WWE Hall of Famer Tony Atlas.
The road to WrestleMania has begun. Wrestling fans are looking to add to their man caves. You got to see what we have in the eBay store.
Check it out.
On October 28, 2020, Wrestling's Scariest Night was back with WWE NXT Halloween Havoc. This limited edition collector's autograph poster is number 12 of only 100 produced and is signed by all 9 superstars featured on the poster, including Johnny Gargano, Damian Priest, Candice LeRae, Io Shirai, Dexter Lumis, Cameron Grimes, Rhea Ripley, Raquel Gonzalez, and your Halloween Havoc host, Shotzi Blackheart. Comes with WWE authentication hologram on the back. You'll also receive an on-air thank you from WWE Hall of Famer Mr. USA Tony Atlas and a bonus mystery autograph photo. Help keep wrestling legends working. Get this awesome collectible now. Wrestling fans, especially here in the Boston area, we want to thank our great friends at Red Rose for their support for all of our charitable endeavors and programming efforts. Red Rose is 2 years young and extremely thankful for all the support they've had from our neighbors here in Melrose and beyond for an amazing first 2 years. Red Rose thanks Melrose and all of the first responders who have fought the good fight and have never given up hope during these unprecedented times. We did it together. Follow Red Rose on Facebook for their anniversary special, facebook.com/Red Rose Melrose. You'll be glad you did. Open until 2 a.m. Red Rose will give you fresh, piping hot, mouth-watering food that'll put an ear-to-ear smile on even the toughest critic's face. Check out their full menu online at redrosema.com or give them a call, 781-620-1889.
All right, wrestling fans, welcome back to Wrestling Insiders, talking a little bit about Public Enemy debuting in ECW the same night Kevin made his ECW debut. When you saw them, did you kind of put them maybe in the back of your head when you had a chance to run creative for WCW a few years later, that there might be a team that you might want?
There was a lot of guys I would have wanted, but I had a thing with Paul that I didn't want to hurt his company. Then when Eric saw what they were drawing, he'd say, well, this guy's, I'm going to get this guy, I'm going to get this guy. And I'd call Paul and I'd say, I can hold them off for 8 weeks, but that's it. You know.
You'd give him a chance to try and finish him up.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's a courtesy, if nothing else, you could try to have done to help him out.
Yeah,
it's a horrible position to be in when you build up matches or storylines and angles, and then a talent is ripped away to go to one of the major companies, and you just kind of stuck in a rut. At least you gave him a chance to finish him up.
Yeah, and I thought he deserved it. I mean, I broke him in, and he deserved it. And it was somewhat, let's hurt them before they get to be too big. The serpent and the egg.
And that was Bischoff's point of view, you think? Or
no, Bischoff's. Step on the egg before it gets to be a full-grown dragon.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Business sense, absolutely.
They already had enough competition going on with WWF at that point, trying to, poach the best talent that they could. Another guy that was on that card that enjoyed WCW later on was Crash the Terminator, better known as Bill DeMott. Any memories of a young Bill?
I think I might even help get Bill booked on that card because Bill was working in Japan with me, and I saw him do the first time he did a moonsault. Oh. And I thought, wow, this guy is something. And I think I might have called Paul. I told him to call Paul. And I wanted to bring him in to WCW when I got in that position.
He was an ICW guy, too, for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah.
With the Savoldis?
Yeah.
When Tony Rumble was there, I kind of remember.
Tommy Dreamer was there too.
Yeah. He was doing the Chippendale gimmick.
And Taz,
the Wolfman, or whatever that was supposed to be. So
Tasmania.
Some really memorable talent came from even that tiny promotion that never really gained the momentum that it could have. But it produced some strong cards with some strong talent for a long period of time. I just think that maybe Savoldi was looked at as an enemy because he was the only one that didn't want to sell out his percentage to to Vince McMahon and Linda when they took over from the dad.
Right.
Monsoon sold his, and Zacco sold his, but Savoldi wanted to hold on to his piece of the pie, and you didn't want to cross them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how Tony Atlas claims he became homeless, was because every time the Savoldis would try and run somewhere, Vince would be in the vicinity the night before to try and put the kibosh on everything they tried to do. So some of Tony's stories have become a bit fabricated over the time, so we don't know, but we're not going to talk too much about him, as Tony was not. Actually, Tony did wind up in the WW ECW version, managing Mark Henry as the champion in the 2008-2009, but October 1st, 93. Again, you talk about a company that had such a blend of hot newcomers, those talked about in the sheet, so to speak, and some great legends. You talk about that October 1st show. You had Magnificent Don Morocco. You had Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Then you had the debut of a young Sabu in ECW.
Yeah.
You had the Tasmaniac coming in. Memories, the first time you remember seeing Sabu?
Well, again, I was I got a job from the Sheik for the summer in Ontario, and Sabu, I had either his first or second match.
Oh, so you knew him pre-ECW?
Yeah, the Sheik and I were very close, and I knew him when he was setting up rings for his uncle
Oh, wow.
in Ontario, yeah, and training to be a wrestler, yeah.
Wow. And what did you think of Sabu?
I knew he had it.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the Sheik's nephew, you know what I mean?
What did you think of his style?
Thought it was insane.
Yeah.
Thought it was insane, but it was mind-boggling that a human being could do what he did and not kill himself.
Right.
And it changed the wrestling business.
I worry he's not going to have a great ending, or he's going to have a very painful ending as he gets older for everything that he put that body through. And I hope the fans remember that if he ever does need help.
Yeah, I worry about him too.
And what about a young Tasmaniac when he was more of a Wolfman type guy as opposed to the big mouth, badass, smaller, kick-ass guy from New York that he morphed into? Even in 2021, one of the great promos in the business, and back then he didn't even speak.
That's the highlight of the whole thing. They told him not to speak, right? And that's
Right.
why he's been making a great living. Speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In AEW right now he has that heel faction, and I think he's one of the better part of the shows. I always enjoy his promos.
I do too.
They made a great decision to morph him into a position, into a persona where he could utilize that great New York ability.
Right.
I don't know if he still does it, but he had a very, very popular morning sports talk show in New York
I don't think
City.
he does it anymore.
He doesn't do it anymore?
No.
No, but I never heard it, but I bet it was very interesting to listen to.
I heard bits and parts of it. It was very interesting.
Very interesting,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Okay. And back to some of the other younger guys we knew that would morph into different personas. What did you think of a young Tommy Dreamer when he wore the kind of the Chippendale type straps? And
Tommy was a very smart guy,
Mm.
and he saw how the business worked behind the scenes
Mhm.
very quickly. And Tommy has been on top since he's been on top in ECW,
Yeah,
right?
and he's still going strong
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
I mean, he's one of the executives at Impact Wrestling.
right.
Still wrestles anywhere that'll book him pretty much.
Yeah.
He'll go out there and work. I think he's still on maybe only right around 50 or very, very early 50. So he's not a heck of an old guy.
No, he's not. And, he goes out and he does his shtick and he does it well.
Him and Taz were also guys that were on Tony Rumble's first show back in October of '93.
Right.
I remember them in the locker room too. Did you think that with all of the young talent that they were trying to groom in ECW, and you had all of these veterans, some of whom would come in for what you'd call the proverbial one-off, like a Road Warrior Hawk,
Right.
Jim Neidhart. I know Sherry Martel came in as a manager for Shane Douglas for quite a while, but do you think that those folks, at least now you interacted with them, did they see something special in ECW that they could be a part of, or do you think they just said, this is just another independent I can make my payday on and go off to the next one the next weekend?
Well, they might have thought that before they saw what Paul had.
Mm.
And then they all knew if he got the backing, it would take off.
Mm. And December 4th, 1993, you, as we mentioned, you and Taz defeated Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas, who replaced Johnny Gunn, who went on to become Salvatore Sincere in WWF for a short period of time. Must have been nice to be considered championship material in this growing company, knowing that you had such a great veteran presence that you could probably help Taz a great deal try and get over.
I think that's what the whole Paul wanted, the rub. And it was a great decision. It was, to me, one of the best times I had.
Really?
Yeah, because I saw these guys grow every week,
Mm-hmm.
or every show I went to.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew they were all going to make it,
And did it start to feel like home a little after a few of the shows?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really did.
Yeah. So was it something that you would enjoy more than the atypical indie booking that you might get?
Yeah, because of
incredibly intense fans, you know. You knew there was something here, you know what I mean? If
It was going to be intense. It was going to
Yeah.
be wild. It was
Yeah.
going to be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Was the money good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Paul paid me very well.
Did he?
Yeah,
Good. Well,
yeah.
let me ask you this one, maybe a little on the sensitive side, but outside of maybe something I'm forgetting in NWA, was it nice to have your wife as your valet?
Well, she wasn't, if you remember, she was only there for a short time with me. And
Right.
then she went with Sandman.
Right.
And I thought that period was great.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that was a good, they had good chemistry.
Yeah, they had very good chemistry, you know, and with doing a tag team, she didn't get the rub she deserved. And with being with Hack, she really helped him, and he helped her become stars.
He needed the rub.
Yeah,
You were giving the rub to Taz.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But for you personally, was it nice to have her?
Yeah.
Was that the first time since Florida that she, because I don't remember her managing you in WCW.
No, she
Or
never-
NWA.
No,
Yeah. So that was the first time in quite a while. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And like you said, when she got with Sandman,
yeah.
there's a guy that nobody really knew, but when she got with him, she had that credibility
Right.
that he was lacking, and it helped elevate him.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And he worked very hard to make it work too. You know what I mean?
He started off as I think almost kind of like a surfer type
Yeah.
guy.
he was
And
a-
think of what he morphed into
Yeah,
over the next couple of years.
That's completely different. He did start off as a surfing dude.
Yeah.
And he morphed into, you know, Hack. It was
And what an interesting human being.
very, very, very interesting.
And a very smart guy too, which I don't think people realize.
Yeah,
Very smart guy.
Yep, he's a very smart guy. I don't think he's wrestling much anymore.
And I hope he doesn't.
Yeah,
It's not, I don't think that benefits him.
no, he's hurt himself a lot.
If he could do indies maybe where he just does a run in, people would just be happy to hear that song, sing along,
Yeah.
see him come in and beat the shit out of someone with a cane. He
Yeah.
doesn't need to have matches at this point, in my opinion.
I think you're right.
But again, that's one man's opinion, folks. That's why we have the premiere chat open to the right during the premieres. Or if you have some thoughts on everything Kevin and I are talking about after the premiere, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. It certainly helps with YouTube. The super chat is open during the premiere as well, and you can give us a big thumbs up if you're having fun. Hit the subscription button, because right now we're going to take a brief time out. We're going to wrap up the show. Stand by.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, I'm Dan Marati.
And I'm Mr. USA WWE Hall of Famer Tony Atlas.
The road to WrestleMania has begun. Wrestling fans are looking to add to their man caves. You got to see what we have in the eBay store.
Check it out.
Here's your chance to own a piece of history from the 2020 WWE Draft. On the second night, October the 12th, The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, and Alexa Bliss unleashed hell on Andrade and Zelina Vega. This limited edition 11x14 collector's poster is number 26 of only 50 made, personally signed by both The Fiend and Alexa Bliss, direct from friends at WWE. Comes with certificate of authenticity hologram on the poster itself, suitable for framing. You'll also receive a bonus autographed mystery photo and an on-air shout-out as our thanks to you. Get this ultra-rare autographed Fiend and Alexa Bliss poster now.
Cheer! Why, hello! I would ask what was on your mind, but I already know. You want to know what has got my beard looking oh so majestic. And I'll tell you, it's sexy as hell beard care. Coconut oil, vitamin E oil, almond oil, both sweet and bitter, shea butter, it's all natural. Yes, JTG has actually come out with a high quality product. So support your boy by going to sahbeardcare.com and take one step closer to becoming sexy as hell. Cheer. Ooh, cheer. You know?
Wrestling fans, welcome back to a special installment of Wrestling Inside is Extreme, because this is probably the only time we're going to have Kevin on this show. He was an early mainstay in ECW, but he wasn't there for a heck of a long time, but he was very helpful when he was there. I just remember I thought it was so cool the first time that Tony Rumble used you. Not only were you working ECW shows, but you were also starting to get back into the mix in WCW in '94 with Dave Sullivan.
Right.
But we'll get to that point too in these great interviews that we want to produce. But you've worked some very interesting teams when you and Taz were the tag team champions, as I did my research. I didn't even remember that what would be better known in WWF is the Orient Express, the Bad Company.
Yeah.
Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka were there. Those must have been some pretty good matches.
Yeah, they were very good matches. I've known Pat, I worked for his father. So
No, Pat Tanaka's father was in the business?
Duke Kemoka, one of the greatest heels of all times.
I didn't know there was even a relation.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
That, again, this is why we do those shows.
Yeah.
What a great tag team, though.
Oh, they were fabulous.
I mean, I don't know why WWF didn't do more with them. I know they weren't quote-unquote superstar-looking material, but, I mean, Pat, one of the more underrated guys of
By
that era.
far.
He was so good. Like we were talking about with Bobby Eaton, maybe not as good as Bobby Eaton, but a guy that could have a really great match with just about anybody.
He could.
Yeah. And nothing against Paul Diamond, but I mean, Tanaka was just great.
And there's one of those things, second generation, you know what I mean? And you didn't even know it, but that...
And I had no idea.
His father was probably one of the top 5 heels ever in Texas.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was that hot.
Oh, yeah. He was
I mean, I knew the
yeah.
name well enough, but I had no idea there was a relation and no idea that he was that hot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so, and another unique team that you worked with were, you go from Pat Tanaka's size to Ron and Don Harris, the Harris brothers.
Yeah.
Those must have made for some melees, so to speak.
Yeah, and I remember I was going back to WCW, so I was finishing up in ECW, and Paul said, "You're going to drop the belts tonight." We're going to have one of them clip Taz. I said, "No, take it on me. I'm leaving." It's the only thing
You were a pro about it.
It's the only thing right to do. I'm not going to be around, and I never thought 20 years later, 25 years later, I'd be asking about this match, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
For Taz.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and the right thing for business in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are the guys that are staying. Those are the guys
Yeah.
you're trying to build the company that are going to be there.
Right.
Why have them lose? I don't think it hurt Kevin Sullivan in his credibility because he lost one match in ECW. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One interesting one I came across was February 5th, '94. You guys lost a match to the unique duo of Pat Tanaka and the Original Sheik. I didn't even know the Original Sheik made it to ECW.
Yeah.
Your memories of that guy, because I know you said you worked some tours for him too.
I worked with the Sheik quite a bit. In Florida, he was a babyface.
He was a
In
babyface.
Florida against me, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I would have never guessed.
And one of the great times of one of the Great American Bash, I can't remember what year it was, but I begged Dusty to use the Sheik in Cobo Hall. And he said, it's not going to try. He's been out of business too much. It was the biggest house we had on that tour. And that match was me and Dick Murdoch against the Sheik and Dusty. And we did a double switch where it ended up being me and the Sheik against Rhodes and Murdoch. And he was supposed to come back the next show, and they didn't give him the money they promised him.
I think I heard that part of the story somewhere, whether it be an interview or a podcast or something. When they did use him, there was something financially involved, and he didn't keep coming back. What a shame, too, because you know what? In moderation, what a great heel.
Yeah.
I mean, to see it, I don't know how it would work in 2021 to do that every week, but in moderation,
Yeah.
well,
And I worked in Japan with him as his partner, and he was terrific.
Yeah.
He was terrific.
Yeah. Well, all right, fast forward and continue a little bit later in '94. You finished up, you dropped the tag team titles. but you did return in November of '94 as part of a lawsuit settlement. WCW took that name for the Spanish show when Worlds Collide, and instead of money, Paulie wanted talent. So you came in, Arn Anderson came in, Bobby Eaton came in. I think Pillman was scheduled, but he got injured. Were you happy to make a one-off appearance? Was it kind of fun to do something a little different and go in? 'Cause I think that was November of '94.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure Paulie was absolutely thrilled to have you guys coming in.
Yeah. It helped him out too.
Other guys you worked with in ECW before we go. So maybe a short story, short memory. Mikey Whipwreck. He had a short stint in WCW a little later on, but they tried to build him up in ECW as that little runty guy that could come away with the big win.
Right. And Mikey did his job. He did his job what Paul wanted, and he did a hell of a job. Yeah.
And other guys, talk about a Legends match that ECW featured you and The Fly.
Yeah.
Any memories of hooking up with Jimmy? I remember you guys in the CWA for Tony Rumble hooked it up.
Yeah.
Was it nice to work with an old vet like Jimmy?
Yeah, it was a pleasure. You know, Jimmy was incredible.
At that point in your career, did you enjoy working more with the young guys or the vets?
Well, the young guys, because you knew you were passing something on. You know, with the veteran, I mean, I couldn't do any of Jimmy's high-flying shit, so I wasn't going to learn any of that. So, but it was nice to work with him. He was one of the greatest performers of all times.
When you went back to WCW in '94, was it in your deal that you couldn't do ECW anymore?
Yeah,
or?
yeah, they shut that down.
So how was it that you were able to do all the stuff with Tony?
Because they didn't see Tony as a threat.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you wish you were able to do both if you could?
Yeah,
WCW and
sure.
ECW, yeah. September the 1st, not really ECW theme, but wrestling theme. We lost a guy maybe that I'm going to think that you may have had some to-dos with in Florida, Boris Malenko.
Yeah, he was a babyface. When I first was a babyface down there, he was a babyface. Then he, opened the school and retired. So I never got to work with him.
Never had a match.
No.
Was he involved with angles and such around the time when you were in Florida?
No, his big angle was with Eddie way before me.
Oh, long before your time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Dean's not a young guy, so that certainly makes sense. November 19th, '94. The final chapter of Kevin Sullivan and ECW. You and Cactus battled Public Enemy to a no contest, so no one had to do a job. Again, part of those lawsuit settlements. Did you realize it was your last night that night?
Yeah, and I knew that Johnny and Teddy were coming over to us.
Sooner than later, yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a lot sooner than any later, So that's why we didn't beat them, because I didn't know how much longer they had left.
Right, yeah. And you'd want them to come into WCW looking good,
Yeah.
not as job guys on the way
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Well, as we wrap up this episode, and hopefully this doesn't hurt any feelings, but why is it that you think in 2021 ECW is remembered so much more fondly than WCW? I mean, WCW was owned by Turner Broadcasting. It was on primetime television across the country. Yet when you look at things that WWE does, that ECW DVD was one of the best-selling DVDs they ever sold. When they resurrected pay-per-views, they never did a retro WCW pay-per-view. They did 2 ECW retro pay-per-views, and one of which did monster business that far outdrew some of their regular B pay-per-views. When it came to relaunching a brand, almost like a developmental, they didn't choose the WCW name that they owned. They went with ECW. Why is it that you think that ECW has such a special place in so many people's hearts compared to what was a major league monster of a company?
You just hit the nail on the head. Vince didn't want to be reminded about WCW. Plus,
Really?
Vince
Okay.
had been paying Paul for a long time.
Right.
Underneath the table.
Yeah, right.
So he he made sure, and they had a niche, especially in the Northeast. And I'm willing to bet most of those pay-per-views were in the Northeast.
The two retro ones they did,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah.
were at the Manhattan Center in New
Yeah.
York City, yeah.
And that was their home base, and where WCW home base was down south.
Right.
And I think they did the right thing to choose ECW.
Do you think that WWE, and I know they did retro DVDs and so on, but do you think that they could have made some good money on a retro WCW type pay-per-view? Do you think there was still enough of a fan base, or do you think that disaster of Russo era the last couple of years
I don't think they
drove
could
them
have
away?
made it, but if they did the NWO from the beginning to the end, from the beginning and told the story till Hogan, they could have made some money off that.
Well, they did try and bring the NWO in, and talk about a disaster.
Yeah.
But I mean, not that I want to sit here and bury WWE, but I mean, WCW should still be going today. How they flushed that down the toilet so quick. I mean, they debuted that Invasion in July of '01, and by Survivor Series in November, WCW was gone.
Yeah.
Then they tried to bring in the stars that had those Turner contracts as
Right.
opposed to WCW contracts one by one.
Right.
I mean, the NWO failed within 6 months. The Hogan magic came back, and they wanted to use him as the red and yellow, but there was only so much you could do with Hogan at his age.
Right.
They brought in Goldberg. They made him look like an idiot within a week, putting gold dust wig on him.
Right. Right.
Scott Steiner came in white hot for a match with Triple H.
Right.
And Triple H wanted to think he was Ric Flair and could go 30 with anybody.
Right.
Scott Steiner's body was not ready to go 30. You know
Right.
what I mean? He was in rough shape.
Right.
So it just seemed like everybody they tried to bring in, by hook, by crook, it didn't work out the way it certainly did in WCW. I think their biggest success out of anybody that came out of WCW was probably Booker T. He had he's still involved with them now.
Yeah.
But I mean, he had a pretty good run in WWE.
He had a great run at WWE.
Other than that, can you think of anybody?
No.
Isn't that sad?
Yes, it's very sad.
And you just, as someone that, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but maybe there's a part of you that I know with what I put into what I do, you almost look at it as a child sometimes.
Yeah.
And to see it, what it turned into at the end, just pissed on and kicked around and beaten with the nonsense that they horrible television shows that they were putting on. They can say, oh, well, it did this much of a rating. Well, people slow down and look at car wrecks on the highway when people die, too.
Yeah.
It was horrendous. And there was just, for a company, I believe, and you could maybe correct me on this, there was an offer at one point, around 98, 99, for $250 million for a company out of California that wanted to buy WCW. And a year and a half or so later, after the Russo damage was done, it sold to Vince for $2.5 million, plus $2 million in TV ads.
Yeah.
He in one DVD they made a profit off of buying the entire company. How sad is that?
That's sad. It was inside collusion. Nah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to save that for some of the WCW episodes. See, he left us with a cliffhanger, folks. That's a good booker. All right, fans, as we noted, the premiere chat is open. The super chat is open. If you're not with us during the live premiere, again, we appreciate your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, thumbs up, subscribe if you want more Kevin Sullivan. I know I'd love to have Kevin every week. Believe me. I can't afford $55 like Tony used to get, though. That's too much. So for Kevin Sullivan, I'm Dan Marati. We'll see you soon on Wrestling Insiders. Until we speak again, be well, be healthy. Good night from Las Vegas.
Thank you for joining us. Please give the video a big thumbs up, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel to enjoy more great content. Don't forget, you can help keep wrestling legends working. Check out our eBay store and join the Boston Wrestling family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling so we can produce more in-depth shoot interviews.